she took in a dying stranger, not even knowing that his appearance would uncover a terrible secret that threatened her family. When it was revealed that he was being hunted by the man who had once ruined her life, the woman's entire world was turned upside down. But it was his secret past that became the key to their salvation and the beginning of a just retribution. But just listen to how shocking the turn of this drama was, and why justice, in the end, prevailed. The storm on the plane came suddenly. First, the wind tore the last shutter from the window, and then the sky erupted with the cries of thunder. Sarah Weston held her sleeping children close and, for the 100th time, mentally asked her late husband for forgiveness. Not for not coping, she was holding on with her last bit of strength, but for the children often falling asleep hungry, and for herself no longer remembering what it was like to laugh. The farm that Grace and Caleb had once built from scratch in Texas was now dying. After Caleb's death from a fever, everything had gone wrong. Drought, locusts, debts on the land. The neighbors no longer came close. Poverty had a sticky smell. All that was left was an old 3-room house, a goat, and a little corn in the cellar. That evening, Sarah noticed a silhouette swaying on the horizon. She thought it was a mirage, but when she got closer her heart sank. A man, covered in blood, with a bullet wound in his chest. He collapsed on her doorstep like carrion from the sky and barely managed to gasp, "Don't let them find me," Sarah, without thinking, dragged him inside. It was what Caleb would have done, and so she did it too. Her son, Ben, 7 years old, Bright immediately brought water, and her daughter, Lily, 5, was scared but didn't cry. It was strange. The children seemed to understand that this man was not just a tramp. That night, when the storm subsided, Sarah bandaged his wound. The bullet had passed close to his heart, but hadn't hit it. The stranger was young, with an unshaven face covered in dust. He wore an expensive belt with an eagle-shaped buckle, a rarity on this side of the prairie. And his boots too good for a mercenary. He woke up in the morning. At first, he flinched when he saw her, then almost fainted again. Sarah held out water to him. "You're in my house. Far from the sheriff, if you're afraid of the law, or from those who shoot without warning." She squinted. "Who are you?" He drank in silence. Then he managed to say, "Luke. Just Luke." Sarah didn't press. She knew how hard it was to talk when you were wounded in body or heart. She was the same way. For the first few days, Luke barely moved. Lily would slide baked potatoes to him. Ben fed the goat and hauled firewood. Sarah was surprised the children accepted him as if he had always been there. But she herself didn't allow herself to relax. Anxiety was building up in her heart. A week later, the man was already sitting on the porch. He barely spoke, but he watched the children as if he had forgotten that he had no right to. And he caught Sarah's gaze more and more often, which held more questions than trust. On the 8th day, a strange rider rode into the yard. In a black coat, on a horse without a brand. Sarah didn't have time to close the shutters, he had already seen her. "Ma'am," he grinned, "did a wounded fellow run through here? Tall. Looks dead, but is as tough as a rattlesnake. Maybe like your husband, or an ex." Sarah said nothing. Luke inside the house was already holding a revolver, even though he had previously claimed to be unarmed. But Sarah silently walked out onto the porch and replied, "Only my children are here, mister. And me. We're not a hotel for the dead." The stranger smirked. Then his gaze lingered on the children peeking out the window. Something flickered in his eyes that made Sarah's legs weak, not interest, but a threat. He left, but slowly, as if to remind her he would be back. That night, Sarah didn't close her eyes. Luke didn't sleep either. He came up to her, leaning against the wall. "You knew who he was." Sarah nodded. "And you did too. You just didn't tell me." He clenched his fists. His lips trembled as if he wanted to say something, but couldn't. "If they come back, you don't have to pay for my sins." "It's too late," she said dully. "You're here. And for the first time in a long time, my children feel like someone will protect us." He looked at her as if for the first time. It was clear to Luke, this house was the last line. Here, he would either be finished off, or he would become something more than just a problem. He knew Sarah was not one to forgive easily, but she was one to believe in the power of good to the very end. And maybe that's why he, a criminal with blood on his hands, for the first time in a long time, wanted to stay alive. The next morning, everything seemed deceptively calm. Sarah went out into the yard before dawn to milk the goat. The fog lay low, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. In the house, Luke slept next to the door, a revolver within reach. The children, curled up in balls, were quietly snoring. The world seemed to have decided to give them a break. But Sarah knew, the calm is always before the storm. "Who are you to them?" she suddenly asked Luke at breakfast. "To my children." "To me." He didn't raise his eyes. "I'm nobody," he said. "I just wanted to survive. And I thought I'd leave as soon as I could." Sarah silently gave him more soup. Thick, with corn and leftover dried beans. She cooked it like she used to for Caleb. Not out of love, out of respect. And, possibly, out of hope. Luke looked up. But now, he swallowed. "I don't know. This place. You three, I didn't think there was anything left in me but anger." Sarah heard. "You're giving me something that I don't forgive myself for." They started rebuilding the bar together. Luke, though still limping, hauled boards and mended the roof. Ben ran for nails. Lily held the lamp in the evenings. Sarah found herself no longer feeling lonely. But one day, returning from the creek, she saw Luke standing with her son. The boy had a revolver in his hands. A real one. Luke was explaining how to aim, how not to shake, how not to give in to fear. Sarah froze. "What are you doing?" Her voice trembled. "He's a child." Luke took the gun from the boy calmly. "He's your son. And I'm trying to give him some kind of a chance, if I don't make it." "You're not his father," she cried out. "And not a hero. You're a murderer, running from death." Luke backed away. Even Ben was scared. The silence cut the yard like a knife. "I know who you are," Sarah whispered. "I heard the stranger say the name. Luke Devereaux. You're wanted in 3 counties. For robbery. For blood. Not just blood," Luke said dully. "For a family. Who were killed when I was trying to live an honest life. Then I stopped trying." He turned and left. Not into the house, into the steppe. Without a hat, without a weapon. He just walked as if he wanted to disappear. Sarah stayed on the porch. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. Why did he come here of all places? Why did she let him in? Why was the heart that had been silent for so many years suddenly beating again? That same evening, a fire appeared on the horizon. Torches. Horses. People. -1, maybe 6. Riding fast. Without lanterns. With rifles. Ben understood first. For him. They've come for him, right? Sarah was trembling, but she didn't answer. She just took the children, locked them in the cellar under the floor where they used to store salt, and said, "Not a sound. No matter what happens." When Luke returned, he knew he was too late. They were already in the yard. One was holding Sarah by the hair. Another was rummaging through the house. A third was spitting on the floor. "Where is he?" The leader, the one who had come before, shouted. "Where's your hero, huh? Or do you still think he'll save you?" Sarah spat in his face. He hit her, hard. Her face turned to the side, and blood came from her lip. "He left," she whispered. "Like everyone else." But Luke was nearby. He stepped out of the shadows wounded, limping, with a rifle at the ready. Not quite. He shot first. The bullet hit the nearest man's shoulder. Then chaos ensued. Sarah fell to the ground. The riders opened fire. Luke shot quickly, as if time mattered again. One of the men screamed he fell. Another rushed to the barn. But a pop rang out from inside Ben. Damn, Ben had fired Caleb's old shotgun. Luke shielded Sarah as the last bullet flew in their direction. He groaned. But he didn't fall. When it was all over, 3 of the bandits lay dead. 2 had run away. And Luke stood, swaying, with blood on his stomach. He looked at Sarah. In his eyes not pain. A plea. "Don't let them forget," he whispered. And fell. The night smelled of gunpowder and blood. Sarah held Luke's face. Beneath her palm a rattle, beneath her fingers his lips, slightly trembling, blue. She tried to stop the bleeding on his stomach, but the fabric was soaking through faster than she could change the bandages. "You're not going to die. Do you hear me?" she whispered. "You have no right to die. Not after." Luke barely managed to smile. "After I taught your boy how to shoot." Tears streamed from her eyes. "After you became someone to me." He lost consciousness. For 3 days, Sarah fought for his life. She brewed tinctures, as the old granny from Missouri had taught her. She cauterized the wound with a heated knife. She prayed, something she hadn't done since Caleb died. Ben didn't leave the door. Lily brought water, wiping her mother's forehead. They didn't ask for Luke to stay, but they could no longer imagine the house without him. On the 4th night, he spoke in a feverish rant. They burned the house, she was screaming. I was too late. I found them, a sob. But everything was already. Sarah couldn't understand it all, but she saw herself in his pain. He had lost too, and he was seeking revenge. When he regained consciousness, he had one word: little girl. Sarah squeezed his hand. Who? He was silent for a long time. Then he exhaled, my daughter. She was 4 when it all happened. I went to town for a day, and he trailed off. I couldn't even find the bodies. Everything burned. Only a chain with a name. Sarah closed her eyes. She remembered how she first saw him by the fence, emaciated, with a sack in which metal clinked. Not weapons. Jewelry. Children's. You weren't hiding, she whispered. You were dying. He nodded. A tear rolled down his cheek. I wanted them to kill me, but they wouldn't. And you wouldn't. A week later, the house was quiet again. Luke could already sit up. Laughing, he taught Lily how to play dice, while Ben threw a lasso at a branch on the fence. Sarah made corn tortillas for the first time, without the feeling that it was their last meal. But everything changed when there was a knock at the door. A man was standing on the porch. Thin, tall, in a long, dusty coat. Pardon me, he said politely. I was told a woman named Sarah Miller lives here. She might have some information. What information? Sarah gripped the doorknob tighter. He bowed his head slightly. About a man I'm looking for. Luke Devereaux. I'm his brother. Silence descended inside the house. Luke came out himself. Slowly. With support. He froze when he saw the guest. Andrew. Alive. Well, I'll be. The man smirked. I thought you were long buried. Or in hell. Sometimes it seems that would have been easier too. Sarah stepped forward. Why are you looking for him? He's not that person anymore. Andrew raised his hand. I know. I wasn't looking for him for the law, but to tell him, you've been acquitted. Luke went pale. What? The real killer is the same man who tried to kill you here. They found your girl's chain on him. Blood. Things. Everything. You're a free man, brother. Silence. Not even the birds were singing. Sarah didn't believe it. Luke didn't either. Why didn't you say so sooner? He asked, his voice strained. Because I wasn't sure I'd find you alive. And I didn't know if you'd forgive me. They stood in silence. 2 men with a single fate. One revenge. The other redemption. Later, that night, Sarah was sitting on the porch. Luke approached quietly, sat down next to her. On his face still a scar from the fight. In his eyes unease. What now? She asked. She was silent. You can leave. He said it calmly. You're safe now. The children too. I did what I had to do. I'm not expecting. Sarah looked at him for a long time. Then she said, what if I want you to stay? Luke turned away. I don't know how to be the one who stays. I've lived with death for so long I don't know how to live anymore. She took his hand. Then learn, here, with us. He looked at her, and for the first time in a long time he nodded. 2 months passed. The heat had subsided. The wind was once again bringing the smells of wildflowers. Everything in the Miller house had come back to life. There was livestock in the barn again, chickens in the coop, and even Ben's old gramophone was repaired. But all of this was held together by a fragile balance. By one man who still couldn't decide if he was worthy of happiness. Is he leaving? Ben stood in the doorway, looking grimly at Sarah. Again. She didn't answer right away. She just adjusted the blanket on her daughter. He just wants to take his brother to New Mexico, to show him the grave. Then why did he only take his saddle and a knife? Sarah sighed. Ben understood too much. She found Luke at the stable. He hadn't heard her steps. He was already tying a sack to the saddle. So, you're leaving after all. He didn't turn around. It's too good for me here. That's more frightening than hiding. She clenched her fists. Cowardice. He nodded. Maybe. But an honest one. I killed Sarah. And even if the court forgave me, I haven't forgiven myself." She stepped closer. "You saved us. Yourself. Even the brother you hated. You're alive. So live." He still didn't look at her. "I'll come back. If I can." She whispered, "We'll wait. But not forever." He left before dawn. Ben was silent all day. Lily asked why Mom was looking at the gate again. And on the third day, riders arrived. Dust rose in a high wall. 7 men. Men in coats and with rifles. One of them the same mayor from the neighboring town who had once promised Luke forgiveness if he found the killers. And then betrayed him. "Where is he?" the mayor asked. "We know he was here." Sarah stepped forward. Her face was like stone. "He's not here. And even if he were, you wouldn't get him alive." One of the riders spat. "And you're just a simple widow, aren't you?" "Don't you forget," a voice said from behind her. "Simple widows know where to hide bodies." Luke stood on the porch. Dusty, tired, with a rifle on his shoulder. "I went far, but I smelled the rot. I couldn't not come back." The mayor went pale. "You have no right, and you have no conscience. You're the one who paid for my house to be burned. Your men killed my family. I found the evidence. Handed it over to the marshal in Fort Worth. They're already on their way." The riders exchanged glances. One spurred his horse to run. But Luke shot upwards. "Take one step, and I'll shoot to kill." The mayor dismounted his horse. He was no longer that confident official. Just an old coward, hiding behind power. "You won't kill me, will you?" Luke came closer. His eyes were cold, but there was something else in them, calmness. "No, I'm not a killer anymore. I'm a father, a friend, and a man who chooses to live." He hit him with the butt of his rifle and he collapsed. The mayor was arrested. The newspapers wrote, "Hermit exposes criminal conspiracy of officials in the state." They called Luke for interviews, offered him money. He refused. Sarah just watched as he mended the fence again. How he taught Ben to tie knots. How Lily called him daddy for the first time. He stayed. Not because he had nowhere to go, but because for the first time, he wanted to stay. In the evening, Sarah came up to him. He was sitting by the hearth, looking into the fire. "And yet," she said, "what was in that sack you came with on the first day?" He was silent. Then he stood up, took the sack from a drawer, and handed it to her. Sarah untied the knot. Inside, a chain with a child's locket, a tin teddy bear, a chart drawing, and a letter. "Daddy, please come back soon. I love you, Clara," Sarah cried. He sat down next to her. "I didn't know how to bury the past." She took the locket and put it around her neck. "You don't bury it like that. You keep it." He looked at her. "You buried someone too, didn't you?" She nodded. "My faith in the future. Until you came." They were silent for a long time. Then he took her hand. "Thank you for opening the gate, Sarah." She smiled through her tears. "Thank you for knocking."